Good morning, everyone. How are all of you this morning?
Pretty good.
Pretty good?
Yep.
Okay, well, I hope when you go outside that pretty good goes up a notch because it looks gorgeous outside. I did pumpkins with my kids yesterday, which means I have nothing else on the docket today. No pumpkin carving, no any other running around, which always is a great start to my Sunday. So my name is Reverend Crystal Goodger. I am the president of the Wisconsin United Methodist Foundation, and I am here today to talk to you about planned giving. So I wanted to begin with how many of you know about the foundation? What the foundation is, what we do, who we are. I've got one taker on that. Okay.
No, two.
Two. I have two takers. Okay. Well, why don't we begin with that then? So, the mission of the Wisconsin United Methodist Foundation is to assist the ministries of United Methodists in Wisconsin through lifelong financial stewardship. Nice and vague, right? Okay, that's always a great place to start. So what do? We do scholarships and grants. We do loans to churches. We do capital campaigns for churches. But the biggest part of what we do, besides the investing of money of churches, is that we like to go out and educate. So we like to talk about stewardship. What is stewardship? How do we help our churches with stewardship? How do we rethink money in the church? Because money is not just the passing of the plate. Money is lifelong financial stewardship. It is discipleship. So that's a little bit of who we are. I also like to say that specifically that though we have a relationship with the Wisconsin Annual Conference, we are separate from the conference. So whether you like, love, whatever, the annual conference, we are separate from the conference. We are our own 501c3. So that means whatever money you all have, whether if you have it with us, it is your money, not the conference's money, and so it's separate. Another thing I should say is that we have a board of directors. So we have 20 to 30 people, and it is split between lay and clergy. One of our board members who is rotating off, so we do an 8-year cycle. And then we ask, so it's a little bit unlike the church where sometimes I know in churches you sign up for something and you didn't realize you signed up for a lifelong position. We do watch those a little more carefully, and at 8 years we have them rotate off just to allow them to take a breath. If after a year they wish to come back on, they may by all means do so. We're happy to have them back, but it kind of gives them a breath to reevaluate if this is really where they want to be or not. One person who is rotating off of our board is your pastor. So we were so happy to have her for 8 years. She was on our grants committee, and we give out grants to churches. One specific set of grants that we were doing in 2020 was our New Way grants, and we gave over $300,000 to Wisconsin churches to update specifically technology in this new era.
Which we received.
Which you received. So that was very important, and we actually did 2 sets of grants for that, just to help our churches. We understand that COVID was difficult for churches, and not to mention everyone else, but specifically churches. So we tried to help our churches, and we gave money to over 80% of the Wisconsin United Methodist churches in those. So that is who we are. So now I want to talk about money in your church. Where does money in your church come from? Of course it comes from passing the plate. Of course, we're not really passing the plate right now, it's in the back, but for the most part, our money comes from giving by the congregation. But if that's the only place that we are taking in money, then we have a problem. Because you all have a finite amount of money. Unless I'm mistaken, and please raise your hand and we'll take more. Anybody volunteering for that one? I tried. So, we need to make sure that we are looking at all avenues of income, all avenues of where churches can come and bring in money. So yes, giving by the congregation. Then other uses. So if we rent out the building, special gifts, any other events that we might have that could bring in money. But even if we only look at these two areas of giving, that's not enough to do the missions and ministries we want to do. In some churches, that's not enough to keep the doors open. So we need to look broader. And in that case, we need to look at planned giving. And that's endowments, memorials, and bequests. John Wesley tells us to earn all you get, all you can, save all you can, and give all you can. So today we're talking about that last portion, which is the give all you can. But it's the give all you can because you have all saved all you can. What is your legacy? What do people know about you right now? What do people think that your priorities are based on the way you share your time, talents, and treasures? What does that tell people about who you are? What is your witness to the ministry of Christ through your prayers, presence, gifts, service, and witness? So we're looking at the 2018 charitable giving, mostly because 2020 obviously was a bad year, but also the end of 2019. So if we look at 2018, that's the last year that we have really good data, charitable giving was still at a pretty good number at $427 billion. But religious giving had decreased and has been decreasing for decades. So it, just in 2018, was down another 4%. And now religious giving is under 30% of all charitable giving. Another way to think about giving is the fact that over the next couple of decades, there is going to be a huge transfer of wealth. Our boomers, our whatever generation y'all want to call yourselves, whatever generation is going to pass away between now and the next 30 years, is going to transfer $30 trillion to the next generation. The question is where is that money going to go? Children? Grandchildren? Red Cross? The church? Where is that money going to go? And so, we need to look at planned giving. What is planned giving? Planned giving is not giving this second to the church, writing a check out. Planned giving is planning ahead. And what are we doing? We are looking at our personal goals, financial goals, estate planning goals, charitable goals. It's looking at all the goals that we have now and in the future and putting all of that together into a plan. It's about thinking about giving in a way that otherwise is not possible. So there are two ways to give. There's giving now, and there's giving in the future. So giving now, of course, there's in the plate. But again, I want to talk beyond the plate. So how can you give now? IRA rollovers, gifts of stock, gifts of mutual fund, gifts of life insurance. Those are ways that we don't always think about that are options now, beyond our checkbook. And then there's gifts in the future, through your will, and then there's charitable gift annuities and charitable remainder trusts are ideas about gifts in the future. Gifts of stock. Sometimes people will have a nice pretty paper stock and it's in a wonderful frame and it's up on the wall. Wonder if that's doing us any good. We might get a few dollars every quarter or every year, but is that really doing anybody any good other than taking up lovely space on our wall? We invest all of our money and church's money with Robert W. Baird, which is an investment company out of Milwaukee. And because of our relationship with Baird and the fact that we have a large fund with them, they are able to process stock gifts for us at no charge. Normally, if you want to process that pretty paper stock that's up on your wall, there's a commission. But if you do it through us and through Baird, there is no charge to you and no charge to the church. So in 2020, even in 2020, a year that we try to forget, we did 102 stock gifts totaling over $840,000 to local churches. So what do? This is up on our website. You fill out a form. Now, of course, it depends what kind of stock you have. This is, we have a wonderful stock person who deals with this because it depends. Do you have a mutual fund? Do you have a paper stock? Do you have electronic stock? All of that wonderful information. But you pick what kind of stock you have, you fill out the information, you send it to your broker. And then they will, between them and Baird, get it all figured out. The money comes to us, and we then turn around and give it to your church. Which is why you also fill out a second form right here that you send to us. Why do you send it to us? Because if we get money that says Jane Smith just gave 100 shares of 3M, we're like, yay, thank you, Jane Smith. Who is Jane Smith and where does she want this money to go? Do you know Jane Smith? I don't know Jane Smith. This will allow us to know who she is, what church she's from, and where she wants the money to go. So this is a very important sheet for us to have. Also, say Jane Smith does this sheet, sends it to her broker, gives this to us. We now have it sitting on our desk. We look at it one day and say, hey, this has been on our desk for a month. That's unusual. We need to follow through. So then we follow it through and we make sure everything's getting processed instead of you. So that's why this other sheet to us is highly important. Now, none of you are over 70, right? I see no one over 70. I'm sorry, this doesn't apply to your church. Okay, so as some of you may know, the rules changed. And actually, this slide is not even correct. It's 72 and a half. At 72 and a half, you have to take an RMD, your required minimum distribution. You all have been doing this for about 2 years now, right? Some of you have been doing this for about 2 years now, so you know what this is, what this all entails. You have to take money because the government says you have to take money. You've worked many, many years. You've earned this money, and now the government tells you how much you should take and when you should take it. Thank you, government. So, if you have a minimum distribution that you are required to take, what are you doing with it? You can give it to the church. So one of the great things about giving it to the church is when you do it to the church, directly to the church, it is not recognized as income, which is wonderful. So you could give your $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, I don't know. Just keep adding zeros, however many zeros you want to add, and give it directly to the church as, say, your tithe. Now you've paid your tithe for the year, month, quarter, however it would work for you. You've paid your tithe. Now that's not money that's coming out of your checkbook every month. And you've paid it. And you've taken your required minimum distribution. Has anybody done an IRA directly to the church before? Okay. So, in order to do this, and I put a sheet on your table, it came up kind of sideways. So that's how you'll distinguish it from all your other paperwork. It came up kind of sideways. You take this sheet and you fill it out. This is what it kind of looks like, right here. And you fill it out and you give it to your IRA custodian. Meaning wherever your IRA is, you give it to the person who manages it. Now this doesn't mean that they may not have additional paperwork for you, but at least they'll have more than half of the information that they need in order to get this started. Has anyone ever talked to an IRA custodian, a broker, a tax guy, and known exactly what questions to ask? Anybody? Yeah. No. Not at all. But if you present him or her with this piece of paper, he or she will immediately know what you want to do, and that already gets you all on the same page. So the first, I don't know what I'm asking, but I think I want, all of that's gone. You give this, and they say, oh, I know what you want. This has the information of where it wants to go. We're good. I love anything that takes guesswork out of things. Another option, again, I'm just giving you options. I'm not telling you what to do, what not to do. Options. I love options. One option is life insurance. Sometimes we get to a point where our life insurance isn't as necessary. Things like our children are grown and don't need it anymore. Maybe we already have a fund set aside for our funeral expenses, so our life insurance isn't necessary for that. Mortgage is paid, so that wouldn't be necessary. Maybe we've come to that point, and we're just paying it every month because that's what we've been doing for the last 30 years. So, what could we do with our life insurance policy? There are two options. The first is transfer the ownership to the church, meaning the church now owns that policy. You no longer own it, they own it. What they will then do is turn around and cash it out, and now they have the cash. So that would be your gift then to the church. The second option is that you keep the policy, you keep paying on it, but instead of your children, grandchildren, granddog, whatever, being the beneficiary, the church becomes the beneficiary. So when you pass, become dust, then the church receives the value of that policy. Did you know that 70% of Americans do not have a will? Did you know that of the 30% who do, most of their wills are not up to date.
I believe that.
Life changes. Situations change. People are born, people die. And so we need wills, and we need to make sure they're up to date. Not only is a will important, especially wills are most important, of course, when you're young and you have children, and it needs to be decided what happens to children, right? That's always the first and foremost of wills. Second is when you get of an age that now you've acquired stuff. So I have children, I just don't have stuff yet. I have children and I have, let's see, I own a house. I have children and I have debt. So who's going to acquire my children and my debt? I think that's where I am right now. I don't know where you all are, but that's where I sit. So what's going to happen to your stuff? Your house, your assets. That's what we think of a will, right? But that's not the only use of a will. The use also of a will is our ultimate faith statement. You get to decide and you get to tell others what is important to you. Who is important to you. So, considering your church in your will. Now sometimes this is a little difficult. How do I do that? What does that look like? So, the first way is a percentage. So you're giving a percentage of your estate to the church. Maybe a specific dollar amount. $10, $100, $1,000. Feel free to keep adding zeros, however many you want. Directing a portion of your estate. Some people direct a portion of their estate to establish an endowment. Some people make endowments for scholarships, endowments to music, endowments to the building, whatever it may be. Or the church as a residual beneficiary, meaning after everyone else is paid, and after I've given my children, my grandchildren, my whoever, what I want them to have, whatever is left, I want it to go to the church. Now these are all words on a page. Sounds complicated. What's the benefit? Why is this good? Why should I remember the church in my will? First is you get the satisfaction of remembering that you have given a gift to your church. When I think of wills and giving to the church, I think of my mother. My mother, the very first check she writes, and she does write checks, the first check she writes every month is to the church, and she has for 40 years. You better believe the first check after her will be to the church. She believes she tithed in life, she will tithe in death. That is her faith statement as she lived and as she goes. When it comes to wills, you retain all of your assets. You get all your money as you live. So what you need to live now, you still have it. Wills are great because it's the money that you don't need because you're not here that you're giving. There can be a tax savings to those you leave behind because it's going to the church. And you can designate it to something that is important to you. I do put one caveat on this, though it is wonderful to be able to say, this is what was important to me, please use it that way. Also remember that you are then tying the hands of the church. So if you say, I want it to be used for the organ, and then in 20 years there is no organ, that's a problem. Do you have an organ?
Yes.
Okay. There are churches that don't have organs. So just, also remember that. So stating what you want, but making sure that it's wide enough to include what is necessary for the church now and for the future. It's good for you. It's also good for the church. So the gift gets to be used how you wish and for the benefit of the church. The gift is often larger than what you would be able to give now. We're on a fixed income. There's only so much coming in every month, and therefore only so much we can give every month. But when we pass, it's the entire accumulation of what we own. So it's a larger pot. And then the church can continue its missions and ministry. Sample language. I give to thee Cobb, Montfort, or Livingston United Methodist Church. I had the L correctly. United Methodist Church. A blank % of my estate. I give to the United Methodist Church the sum of blank, or all the rest, residual remainder, or all my right, title, and interest in the following property. Those are possible language that you could put in your will. Other ways of looking at things would be charitable gift annuities, in which you give a minimum of $2,000. You start an account in which you receive a fixed amount of money every year, and then whatever is left at your passing goes to your church. Now, in this case, though, if you outlive your pot of money that you have put in, the church doesn't get anything. However, you got that pot all back because you outlived it. So whatever is left goes to your church. And this can be a single life or two life. So whether it's just an individual or a couple. The second is a larger, so that one starts with $2,000. The Charitable Remainder Trust starts with a much larger pot. And the big difference between this one is that instead of a fixed amount that you get every year, this one you get a percentage of the market value. So if the market goes up, you get more. Also, this accounts for inflation. So again, looking at the two, these aren't as common anymore as they used to be 5-10 years ago, but these are other options to look at if you want to give the church money. For any of these, whether it's a charitable gift annuity, charitable remainder trust, or anything that I have said, which I have given you a whole lot of information in a very short amount of time, after you ate and had that settling in your stomach. If you have any questions, feel free to call me, email me, skywrite something in the sky. I will by all means get back to you and be able to converse with you. What questions may you have? Yes.
You asked about tying hands. Small rural churches are closing.
Yes.
So suppose I leave $100,000 to Montfort and it closed a year before I died. What happens?
So when it comes to wills, I always suggest that you put a plan B in things. So you say, I give $100,000.
I was thinking more of the charitable remainder trust and those kinds of things. Those
Yep.
are a lot harder to do that with.
No, you still put a plan B. So however you do a charitable remainder trust or you do a will, whatever it may be, you always put a plan B. So I give whatever to Montfort United Methodist Church. If Montfort ceases to exist, then, so either the money will go to choose another church, choose another ministry, choose something in the community that will continue to serve the community, always, and I say this about anything, always choose a plan B. And unfortunately, with smaller churches, a plan B is unfortunately important.
It's true.
The church without the organ.
You'd be surprised how many churches don't have organs.
Yeah, you have to maintain the organ and a scholarship to train somebody to play it, right?
I suppose, yeah.
There is a
We won't have
church,
Sharon over.
there's a church I'm working with right now that a person passed and the money is for flowers on the worship table, on the altar. And that sounds wonderful, except they have gone away from flowers on the worship table because flowers are expensive. And many people are allergic to flowers. So that fund is now, getting quite large, and they can't do anything with it. So the rule is after 20 years, after a will has started, so after a person's death, 20 years, then you have to go through the courts. So it is possible, but you have to spend money to go through the courts to get it changed. So it's not I can talk to your granddaughter to change it. The will is a legal document, and we are all held to that legal document. So instead of an organ, you could say the music ministries, which includes the organ.
Does the foundation, is the foundation involved in missions, coordinating money for mission work?
Absolutely.
Can you tell me about that?
So there's a few ways. We have many different funds that are specifically for different missions. So we have funds for Redbird, we have funds for, I know we have Red Cross funds, we have UMCOR funds. Some that people have passed away and said in their wills that a certain amount goes to it. So we have thousands of dollars that quarterly go to, that just come out of our funds and goes to those. So we have many different missions that it's because people have designated that. Most of our funds, though, that we do, we keep more local. So we give money, we give grants and just straight up money without being asked, usually to things like Harbor House and the Children's Ministry in, I can't remember the name, Children's Ministry in Milwaukee.
Northcott.
Northcott and a few of those are health and welfare ministries that we give money to every year. We also have some of our funds go to the health and welfare funds, like some of our money goes directly into their funds so that they can give money to some of those areas.
Is that listed on your website, those different missions?
It is not. Most of our missions and ministries is not. The only thing listed is where our scholarships come from. But if you had any of those questions, you could email and we could get that to you. There's pamphlets on your table. Feel free to look at those. If you want to sleep at night, I wrote them, so they'll help you sleep. Yes, ma'am.
Is the United Methodist Foundation a separate entity, or is it an entity within the Wisconsin United Methodist Foundation?
Say that again?
Is the United Methodist Women's Foundation a separate entity, or is it a unit within the Wisconsin United Methodist Foundation?
That would be separate.
That's what I thought of.
Yes.
So this is the state of Wisconsin?
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. We serve everyone in the conference.
And how long have you been here? Apparently 8 years or more.
So the foundation has been running for over 80 years.
Really?
Yeah.
So what is the value, say on last Friday?
I can't tell you last Friday, but in general, we have a $147 million portfolio.
Okay.
You ever see Bob? Hold on, sneaking in.
And most people give to Plan A, their own church, or probably,
Mhm.
if that's possible.
Yeah. Now, planned givings like this are important because think about every time that you open up the paper, and I know as we get older, so my mother last week turned 85. So I'm a different generation. My mother likes to call me a foundling. So I'm adopted, so my mother's 85. And she always says that you get to a generation in which you go from reading the funnies and the sports to the obituaries. Right? Think about when you're opening up the paper and you're reading the obituaries. It says, in lieu of flowers, please send money to. Think about where those twos are from. Are two, right? You're getting Red Cross, you're getting cancer societies, you're getting theaters. How many churches are you seeing? Not many. What's the number one reason though? Because the churches are not asking. The churches don't know how to ask. And the churches are not good at telling you the story of what they're doing and what they can do in their community and beyond. So this is one of those opportunities that I can come in and ask, remember us in your will. Remember us in lieu of flowers. Because I'd like to think that we can do more than a local theater for the work of God. Well, if you have no other questions, I thank you all for coming. Have a great rest of your day. I will be standing here for a while, and then I'll go back there and grab a sandwich. So I am here for as long as you need me.
Thank you.
And since Crystal opened it up, Pastor Crystal, I will tell you a story from a youth group 2 weeks ago when I was trying to get to know the kids, and I said, okay, Pastor Ty always did a lesson with you. What is that lesson? What is it you want to learn? Because I know youth group is supposed to be fun, and they don't want to sit there learning a lesson. And they said, well, like the stories. Oh, what stories? And they said things like, like that kid that killed the giant, Samson. I just listened. I just listened. I said, okay, who else? And they said, the dude who walked on water. He walked across the water and he saved people. I said, Jesus? They said, yeah, but then there was another guy that walked with him. I said, okay, all right, so you want to hear these stories of these people? Yeah, we want to hear that, and then play games. These kids are hungry for this stuff. They want to learn. These kids want to learn this stuff. So we need to propel the church into the future. This is really important. This is really important. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.